Hi everyone, welcome back to my next video. Today I'm here with my new good friend Brad.
Hello.
And Brad is also the videographer now for the channel and the primary video editor. So Brad is on board. Welcome aboard, Brad.
Thank you. It feels great to be here.
And Brad is in a van, just like I am. He's a van dweller. And he does quite a bit of cooking. And so he does cooking in an Insta pot. And a lot of people have asked us about the Insta pot. And so I'd just like to interview Brad and see what he has to say. Is it practical? What kind of foods can you cook with it? What kind of power needs do you have? So, Brad, how long have you had your Instant Pot?
Sure, that's a great question. So I've had the Instant Pot about a year, and I've been on the road for about a year and a half now. And I started out with propane, with a propane tank and a double burner cook stove, and I got this about 6 months into my trip. And so I've been using this for about a year now.
And do you still use your propane?
I don't. In fact, since I bought this, I haven't used the propane. I've been able to actually replace everything I was doing with my propane stove with this Instant Pot. And so I like it a lot. And one of the reasons I really like the Instant Pot is I don't find myself to be an exceptional cook. And so with the Instant Pot, there's a wide room for error. And I think the key is because you're adding water and it's a kind of a pressure cook system, you don't have to worry about scorching things or burning things. Everything just comes out pretty easy, and I like that.
Okay, and so something I make is grilled cheese sandwiches. Can I make a grilled cheese sandwich in it?
So yes, you could.
You could?
You could.
Okay.
Yes. And so the way the Instant Pot works, there's two ways you can use it. You can use it with the lid closed, and this is going to be your pressure cooking. So you can cook soups and stews, and you can cook meats to tenderize them. But the other way that you can cook it is if you take the lid off, and it has just a pan inside, a stainless steel or pot inside, and then it has a little a rest you can set things on top of. But whenever I cook meats, what you do first is you brown the meats in the Instant Pot. So it has a saute feature, which basically just heats the bottom like a traditional stovetop. So could you do a grilled cheese? Yes. The only catch is you would have to dig it out of this pot.
Right. The depth of it down there is going to make turning it a little difficult.
It would be a little bit of a challenge. So
Right.
yeah, for a grilled cheese, you would probably want a traditional type of a pot or pan. And then also for like a large steak or something, you know, that would probably be better on a pan as well,
Right.
on a propane. But this does have the ability, so like whenever I cook, like for example, a stew, I put the meat in here first and I brown it. So you just pour the meat in, put in like a third a cup of water and just stir it, and it browns up the meat. And then from there you can add your ingredients and complete it.
So really where this excels is as one pot meals.
Yeah.
That's what it does really well.
Mm-hmm.
But, well, you could boil eggs.
Yep.
Or you could, well, like beans.
Beans.
This would be perfect for beans.
I've made rice in this.
Right.
And beans, and then yeah, anything you need to boil. So I've used just boiled water for hot coffee or hot chocolate.
And so you make your coffee in it every morning just by boiling water.
Every morning.
Every morning.
Yeah.
So.
And it's nice because you just wake up and you just put in the water and hit the power button, and you know, you don't have to light the propane or any of that kind of business. So.
Yeah, carrying propane's kind of a pain. Yeah, it is. But you know, most of the things I kind of like a grilled cheese. I love a good grilled cheese every so often, and I fry up hamburgers on a pan on my burners. So, but everything else I think you could do in here just, so if you want to just throw a can of chili in there, you could.
Absolutely, yeah, any kind of soup. And that's the reason I like it, is just because it's so easy. You kind of just throw whatever you want in and you cook it. So, and then what I do is I make a big batch. So if I make a soup or a stew, I fill it up and then I'll eat off that for, 4 days.
Right, and so you have refrigeration then?
I do, yeah, I do.
What are you using, a 12-volt compressor or ice chest?
Yes, yeah, it's the Dometic CRX50. And that's a 12-volt compressor, and it's a traditional upright, not the cooler style or the chest style. It opens like a traditional fridge.
Right.
And so what I'll do after I cook is I'll put all my leftovers into a small, like a Tupperware, and then save it. And then when I'm ready to reheat my leftovers, you just put this piece down, and then you just take a regular bowl, put your leftovers in, set it on top of this little trivet, and then you put the lid on, and you just turn it on and it just heats right up.
So now when you say bowl, it couldn't be a plastic bowl.
No, no.
No,
So
no.
I have, you could use like a ceramic bowl, anything that's like microwave safe.
Anything microwave safe.
Yeah.
That's not plastic.
That's not plastic. Yeah. So ceramic. I have a stainless steel, like an old camping bowl that I use. And it comes out hot, you know, you don't want to just grab it.
Right, right.
But it works, yeah.
So even it works great for warming up leftovers. That surprises me. I hadn't.
Yeah.
That's something I would never even have considered.
And what's really nice is because it's heating them up with water in the bottom, everything stays moist. So like your chickens, your meats, nothing dries out when you reheat it. Sometimes in a microwave, you know, you'll add water or you'll add a wet paper towel to add moisture, but this one has the moisture built in, so
Right.
everything comes out tasty.
Right. So you don't want the. Do you always have to have water in it?
Yeah,
Always.
yeah,
If it's on, you want.
Yeah, you always want something because otherwise you will scorch the bottom of the pan. So you always want at least some kind of water in there.
Okay. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, that surprises me because I had thought that it would be mostly big pots, but the fact that you could just do a small, you know, like put what you have.
Right.
A can of chili could just go into a small bowl.
Yeah.
And the small bowl could go right in there.
I heated up tamales today for lunch.
Oh, wow.
So I had some tamales I bought down at the convenience store and I just put them in the bowl, put a little water in the bottom and just steamed them real quick. And they came out good.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
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 I hadn't thought of it as that flexible. So I'm glad we're talking about it.
Yeah.
These are things you probably never thought about.
It's a cool piece.
Yeah. And there's tons and tons of recipes
Oh, yeah.
for the Instant Pot.
Yeah. It came with a huge book, and what I'll do when I want to make something new, like I was trying to figure out some beef stew the other day, so I'll just type in Google, you know, beef stew Instant Pot, whatever you want to make plus Instant Pot, and the recipes will come up off the internet. So there's just endless, and they'll tell you exactly how to do it, what buttons, what settings to use.
So if you want to eat cheaper and healthier, this is the perfect tool.
Yeah.
Beans, you know, grains, all those things. This is the very best way to cook them. And so it essentially is a pressure cooker.
It is, yeah. It's using, and that's really what makes it cook so quickly.
Right.
Is the pressure that it's building. Yep.
So it's very versatile and in ways that I would never even have considered a possibility. And as long as you have refrigeration, it's really hard to buy for one person, as you know and I know, and all of us single people out there know. You go to the store and everything's in big packages and you don't want to mess with it but if you make a big pot of it and you have the refrigeration and then you can eat on it for a week, then that works really well.
Yeah.
That's the most economical and healthiest usually way to eat.
Absolutely.
That's great.
Yeah.
Okay, so one of the things people are going to need to know is how much power do they need? You're running this off solar.
Correct.
So how much solar does a person need to run this?
So I have 200 watts of solar, two 100-watt panels, and then I have a 200 amp hour sealed lead acid battery. And so between those two items, I can run the Instant Pot for, you know, really however much time I need. Most recipes don't call for more than 5-7 minutes. They're pretty quick. But what I have found though, what I will say is it works best if you can use it while you're in direct sun. It is a hungry appliance. We calculated today it takes like 70 something amps.
73 amps.
73 amps when it's running. So it draws my battery down pretty far. You know, usually I'll see it like 11.8, 11.9 if I'm not in direct sun, you know, and so it gets down there. So you definitely want to be in direct sun when you're using it if you can.
And what size of an inverter are you using?
So I'm using a 1,000 watt pure sine, and this is 800 watts is what this is rated at. So it's kind of right there on the edge of what's acceptable.
Right, but there's not a motor, so you don't have a big startup surge.
Correct,
which is a really good thing. That's the hard part.
Right, yeah, there's no surge.
So 1,000 watts runs it fine.
Yeah, runs it fine, and yeah, I haven't had any issues with it. One thing I will say is when I initially installed my inverter, it's a really short run. I only have about probably 12 inches between the inverter and the battery, and I used a 4-gauge cable wiring, and it actually was too small of a gauge for this Instant Pot, and it actually overheated and started to melt the insulation. So I went up to a 0-gauge wire, big boy, and I haven't had any problems since.
And you do check it to see if it's hot.
I do check it occasionally to see if it's hot, but definitely, you know, when you're getting into the big appliances, you want to make sure the wiring's correct.
Right. I run a 2000, and for that I have a 2-aught,
Yeah.
which is, you know, thumb size.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
the cabling is very, very important.
Yep.
Now this is, they come in different sizes, and this
Correct.
is one of the smaller sizes?
Yes, I believe this is 3 quarts. And when I bought it, it was the smallest one they made. I know they have all different stuff now, but this is a pretty good size, even for 2 people. You can still, 2 people can eat out of this and you know, for a couple days. So, but I bought it because I had a 1,000-watt inverter and I wanted to stay under that 1,000.
Right.
But the next size up, I believe, is like 1,200 watts, and then it goes up to like 15 and so on. So as long as your inverter is correct, you could get a larger one.
Right, and the larger one, if you do need a bigger one, if you're having a family, or if you want to cook for groups, and some people
Right,
do
right.
want to cook for the group, you'll need to get a bigger inverter and probably have more solar.
Yeah, definitely. Right, right. More solar.
You definitely couldn't run a bigger one on a 1,000-watt.
No, definitely not.
And are you using a pure sine inverter?
Yes, I am. I'm using a pure sine. That was something I definitely wanted to spend the money on when I bought the system. I did buy the cheap charge controller. It's just a PWM. It's not a MPPT. And so that's something that I'm considering. I think I might upgrade my charge controller so I can get the most, especially going into winter, so I can get the most out of the hours of sun that I have.
You'd get a good 20 to 30% more, and in the winter, that's really important.
That sounds important to me.
It's pretty important, yeah.
Yeah.
And so your inverter has worked real well for it. What brand of inverter are you using?
So the inverter brand of mine is PowerTech On. PowerTech On, and I purchased it off Amazon. I did quite a bit of research, and for a 1,000-watt pure sine, it seemed to be the best value, not the cheapest price. I wanted a good one, but it seemed to be the best value. And it did come with a remote switch to turn it on and off, because my inverter is mounted kind of down out of the way, and so there's a separate switch I mounted up by my sink area that I can just hit that turns everything on. And so this one, I believe, it was 300. It was in the 300s for the price.
That's what you're going to pay for a good inverter.
Yeah. And I was thinking about one of the Xantrex versions, but they were more like in the $500 range. And I just felt like I never usually buy the most expensive. I try to find, you know, just something that's a little bit more affordable. And so this was kind of like one down from the most expensive. So I felt like it was a pretty good choice. And I haven't had any issues with it.
Yeah. And it's really, we mentioned turning it off and keeping it turned off. Big pure sine wave inverters have a very large no load draw. That's what it's called. When the inverter's turned on and nothing's plugged in, it's just on, it's consuming power.
Right.
And it's called the no load draw. On a typical inverter, it's going to be 1/4 of an amp, which doesn't really add up to that much, but on a pure sine 1,000-watt, it could be a 1/2 amp, it could be 3/4, it could be a full amp.
Sure.
So if you leave it on all day, you've burned 24 amps just doing absolutely nothing. So it's really pretty important to keep it turned off.
Yep, and I only turn it on while I'm using it, and then right away it goes back off.
Saves you a lot of power.
Yep.
It burnt, so we actually put my amp meter on it while it was running, and it was drawing 73 amps an hour. And that is a lot. And so it's easy to think that that 73 amps an hour is too much. So for you have 200 amp hours of battery, you can only burn half, you only have 100. 73 goes to the Instapot. You don't have enough to play with. But it doesn't work that way. It's actually amps per hour. So it's 73 amps per hour is 73 amps, but 73 amps per minute, you'd have to divide by 60. So I'm going to do that right now, and we'll figure it out together. So 73 amps divided by 60 equals 1.2 amps a minute. That's a really different story. And if you're only running it for 10 minutes, that's 12 amps, which is pretty insignificant when you have 100 amps to burn. And most of us can afford that. Even if it's a really long cook, at 20 minutes, you're still only at 32 amps and you have 100 to play with. You're getting sun coming in.
Yep.
And so you can afford to do it. So the bottom line is, like with my microwave, it draws about 2 amps a minute, and this thing is drawing about 1.5 amp a minute. So that's really pretty practical for most of us, even with just 200 watts of solar and 200 amp hours of battery.
Very practical. The other thing that I think about is really this is the only appliance I have that draws a lot of amps. I mean, the only other thing I'm doing is running my max air fan. My fridge is only a few amps. and powering my cell phone and my laptop. So, you know, for me to give up a large portion of my power for this is really no problem.
And the bottom line is it works.
It works.
In fact, we were talking about your usage, and you rarely go below 12.5.
12.5.
Yeah.
I saw 12.5 for the first time today because we had a few days where the sun was kind of iffy. We had a lot of clouds, and that was the first time I'd seen 12.5. Usually I don't go below 12.7.
So the proof is in the pudding, and if you're getting by with 200 watts, then you know you're okay. And you did it over the winter as well.
Yeah.
When the sun was a lot lower.
And that's with running, you know, everything else too, the fridge and all the other devices, so.
Brad has been using this for a year, and in that year he rarely goes below 12.5. And so 200 amps is plenty.
Yeah, I was worried when I started that 200 was just going to be getting by, but it's turned out to be, honestly, just probably even more than I need.
There you go. Okay, well, thanks so much, Brad,
Absolutely.
for sharing your experience with the Instant Pot. That's very helpful for a lot of people. Folks, I hope you got something out of this video, and I know you did. If you did, would you please subscribe to the channel, give us a like on YouTube, hit that thumbs up button, and we'll talk to you later.